Luxor changed my life. It can be credited as the property that brought me to Vegas for the first time, with a theme that made me say, I've got to see that. The inspiration for this show, my love for just about all things involving the city, including becoming a student of its history, can all be traced back to this property. While it's true, over the years, I've not spent a lot of time at Luxor. In fact, I haven't stayed at the property since my first trip. I can still say with no exaggeration, I love Luxor. This is the story of the first pyramid built in the desert in over 6,000 years. Coming off the tremendous success of the Excalibur project and looking to diversify their portfolio, Circus Circus Enterprises wanted to build again. Potentially fueling that desire was the Bill Bennett-Steve Wynn rivalry. The two pioneers in the Vegas market were basically polar opposites of one another. Bennett believed that no matter what Wynn built, he could build it better and less expensive. Wynn, on the other hand, thought that whatever Bennett built was just a lesser version of what he could do. In fact, it was said that Treasure Island was a direct response to Excalibur. Wynn told those close to him that Treasure Island would show Bennett how Excalibur should have been done. Regardless, Circus Circus was doing so well after opening the Excalibur that they would be able to fully finance their next project in-house from the corporation's cash flow. In November of 1991, Circus Circus Enterprises announced that they would build a pyramid-shaped resort known at the time only as Project X on the 46 acres of land in between Excalibur and the Hacienda. At the announcement, CEO Bill Bennett apologized to those in attendance, saying, "I'm sorry we don't have any funny hats to wear," a dig at Wynn, who had recently announced his Treasure Island project in a pirate-themed costume, complete with a Buccaneers hat. Project X would be Circus Circus' first attempt at attracting a market beyond the low roller, a market they virtually cornered since Bill Bennett and Bill Pennington took over Circus Circus in 1974. While a name was being determined for the project, some joked it should be named Pyramid Pyramid, a play off the Circus Circus brand. Instead, the company turned to the public with a naming contest. Luxor was chosen, named after the city in Egypt of the same name, located across the Nile River from the Valley of the Kings. Early plans called for a hotel in the shape of a U with what was called step-back layers, because each floor was set back by two rooms, giving the structure a Mayan temple feel with a separate casino atrium. However, as the plan evolved, it became clear that the design was wasting space. If they went with a classic pyramid shape and put the casino in the atrium, they would be able to save money and better utilize the space. Original plans were for it to be 36 stories high, covered in gold glass, and connected to Excalibur via a monorail. At the front of the property would be a replica of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, with a hologram of the Sphinx hovering over a water feature. The Sphinx hologram idea evolved into a 10-story physical representation of the iconic Egyptian statue. At that height, the Sphinx at Luxor is actually 3 times larger than the real one that inspired it. The hologram idea evolved into the property's signature free attraction. At night, the Sphinx would shoot green lasers from its eyes over a water feature and spell the name Luxor on the side of an obelisk in front of it. When a 60-foot wall of water would rise up from the lake, the Sphinx would project a hologram of King Tut onto it, appearing to speak. Just like the Mirage volcano before it, when the property opened, the light show at Luxor stopped traffic. Today, the Sphinx laser eyes have been turned off, and the water feature has been turned into parking spaces. Ground broke on March 16, 1992, with a planned budget of $290 million and an announced opening of October of 1993. Shortly after construction began, the project encountered problems. A corner of the pyramid was sinking. Engineers were called in to address the issue, but the incident inspired silly speculation that the pyramid was cursed. One version went as far as to claim the gods were angry that a replica pyramid was being built. The media gave it way too much attention, which drove Circus Circus CEO Bill Bennett crazy. Multiple tests were done to disprove the whole thing, which they did. However, as late as 2011, the sinking continues to be a lingering issue at the southeast corner of the pyramid that requires periodic maintenance to address. Over the years, unconfirmed reports of internal structural damage have surfaced, but inspectors continue to confirm the building is structurally sound. In June of 1993, it was announced that construction had reached the 28th floor, and the last 70 feet of the pyramid would be installed in one piece. Housed in that piece would be the world's strongest beam of light. At 40 billion candle power, it can be seen not only from pretty much any place in Vegas, but on a clear night, pilots can see it up to 250 miles away. The lamp room is about 50 feet below the top of the building and is serviced by just 2 workers. It's comprised of 39 individual 7,000-watt lamps costing about $1,200 each. Curved mirrors are used to catch the light from the lamps and focus them into one intense beam. When at full power, it costs $51 per hour to operate, with $20 of that going to pay for the 315,000 watts of electricity needed to run it. While on, the lamp room reaches temperatures as high as 300 degrees Fahrenheit. The beam has operated reliably since it was first turned on at the grand opening. However, since 2008, only half of the lamps are lit, as a cost and energy saving measure. On October 15, 1993, 12 days before Steve Wynn's Treasure Island was scheduled to open, Luxor opened in Las Vegas to a crowd of 10,000. The 4th largest pyramid in the world became an instant landmark in the Vegas skyline and was featured on the cover of Time magazine and National Geographic. The 36-story building opened with 2,500 plus rooms and a 120,000 square foot casino, the 2nd largest in the U.S. at the time. Entering the property was intended to be a high-tech, movie-like experience with effects that would simulate time travel. The Egyptian theme was fully embraced throughout, with restaurants like Papyrus, Pharaoh's Feast Buffet, and the Nile Deli. The property featured a collection of attractions that would tell the Luxor story, the adventure of an explorer who purchased the land that Luxor sat on, discovered the pyramid, and went on a quest to find a magical obelisk. The complete story was told over 3 attractions, a motion simulator, a live performance, and a 3D IMAX movie. The problem was, no one seemed to catch on to the fact that you were supposed to do all 3 of them and do them in sequential order. It didn't help that you had to buy the tickets for each attraction separately. And finally, the Nile River ride. Flat-bottomed reed boats, modeled after the ones used by ancient Egyptians, slowly running on tracks hidden under a foot of water in a 15-foot wide concrete channel filled with water surrounding the atrium at the ground floor. Staff dressed up in costume and acted as tour guides, highlighting the various hieroglyphs etched on the walls and decor throughout the property and translating what they meant as they would pass them. Since the inclinators didn't go to all floors, it was necessary to have such a service attraction to make sure guests got to whichever of the 4 corners they needed to go to get to their room. Capable of handling 11,000 people per day, originally the plan was only to offer the ride to guests staying at the property. But demand was so high, they began selling tickets for the attraction. Lines for the ride stretched all around the casino. From an attraction standpoint, the Nile River was a big hit. However, guests complained about having to wait for the ride to get to their room. At first, rather than stop offering the ride to the public, management simply continued to raise the cost of the attraction until it diminished desire. When that didn't work, they repackaged the Nile River ride as just an attraction and allowed guests to go directly to the inclinators. In its first year of operation, the Nile River ride generated $5.1 million in profits. Casino, hotel, and attractions, all this housed in a 90,000 square foot atrium, one of the largest in the world, with the ability to fit 9 Boeing 747 jets stacked on top of one another. Luxor was a technical marvel and an instant success for Circus Enterprises, becoming the most profitable property in the company's portfolio. In its first year, 8 million people visited the pyramid, and it earned an estimated $90 million in profit before taxes. While the Mirage brought gamblers back to Las Vegas, Luxor brought new visitors to the city to see a pyramid in the desert. Despite all that success, beneath the surface, Luxor was a troubled property. The finished cost came in at approximately $400 million, $100 million over budget. When Luxor opened on October 15, 1993, those close to the project would say the property was $25 million and 30 days away from being ready to open. But the 18-month projected time frame to completion was held to, so Luxor could open before Steve Wynn's Treasure Island opened. The consequences of opening too early were apparent immediately. The monorail between Luxor and Excalibur didn't work. Rather than fix the issue and deal with whose fault it was later, Bennett insisted on suing the builder, leaving the monorail out of service when the property opened, preventing the easy flow of visitor traffic from a connection to Excalibur. Most of the second-level entertainment venues had last-minute technical issues and couldn't be opened. Many of the rooms weren't ready. In fact, one story tells of a guest checking into their room and finding 5 TVs and no bed. Because they had not been installed correctly and were never tested, dozens of water pipes burst, causing water to gush from the guest rooms and cascade over the balconies, creating a 20-story waterfall inside the atrium. It seemed like every day the property had a new issue. It got to the point that the staff started to make jokes that pyramids were meant to be tombs, not hotels. The inclinators were a real pain point. The idea was really just a minecart being pulled up the side of a building. However, they had a lot of trouble finding the right polyurethane wheels so the ride wasn't so bumpy. Those bumpy rides caused a lot of people to be afraid of the inclinators. Logistics clearly weren't fully thought through as well. To save money, Bennett insisted that Luxor be built without service elevators to the guest floors. This forced bellhops, maids, maintenance, and room service to share the inclinators with guests. And since the inclinators did not go directly to the basement, staff had to get off of them and push their carts through the lobby to get to the elevators that would take them down to the basement. One positive thing that came from the cost-cutting measures, the choice of going with black panes of glass instead of gold. They weren't an aesthetic choice. Black was less expensive. Fortunately, the decision proved a unique visual as the panes appear to change color throughout the day, affected by the sun and the clouds. This choice had one giant issue at night. It disappeared. And the beam they put on top of the property to draw people to it appeared to belong to Excalibur at night. So, Luxor had to invest $1 million into installing chaser lights that lined the 4 exterior corners of the pyramid to give the structure shape and visibility at night. The system is comprised of 3,000 strobe lights fitted into 5-foot-long cylinders plugged into one another. 108 cylinders are used per corner. The command center that controls it all is located on the 30th floor of the pyramid, set to run automatically each night with the ability to create up to 150 different designs and patterns. The people who designed it, B Engineering, are the same people who built the mechanical window washer used at Luxor. Shortly after Luxor opened, a seismic shift began to happen at Circus Circus Enterprises. After years of questionable decisions by ailing CEO Bill Bennett, the man responsible for rescuing Circus Circus Casino from failure in the mid-'70s and turning it into one of the most profitable gaming companies in history, the board of directors asked him to step down as CEO. He remained on the board of directors for a period of time, but in 1994, he left the company altogether and bought the Sahara in an attempt to compete against his former company. After he left, the company began to take steps to repair the perceived damage Bennett had caused over his last few years with the company. Never was that effort more symbolically represented than it was in March of 1995, when Circus Circus Enterprises purchased Gold Strike Resorts. This acquisition was far more than the company expanding its portfolio. It was about restoring the leadership many felt was the future of the company. The reason this purchase did that was because Gold Strike was the company created and run by Mike Ensign, Glenn Schaefer, and a collection of former leaders Bennett fired for questionable reasons in the early 90s. This move was looked at as a righting of the ship at Circus Circus and restoring the future potential of the company. Second on the fix list was Luxor. While people knew Bennett cut corners to get Luxor open before Treasure Island, most believe he abandoned the original concept behind Luxor, diversifying the Circus Circus customer base. It was supposed to be the company's first attempt at expanding beyond the low roller. However, throughout the project, many of the revisions Bennett made were clearly aimed at attracting the customers the company had already shown that they know how to take care of. To restore that vision, the company brought back another expelled Bennett protege, Tony Alamo, who moved over to MGM after his departure from Circus Circus to help them open the MGM Grand. Upon his return, the first thing he did was reassess everything at Luxor through the eyes of a guest. In 1995, the first thing you saw when you entered Luxor was a ledge, facing a pair of stairs that took you over the Nile River ride. As previously mentioned, the original plan for Luxor was to completely immerse you in the Egyptian theme, like you were joining an archaeological dig as soon as you came in. To support that concept, fake rocks decorated the outer walls of the casino, which is located under the attractions level of the property. This structure over the casino simultaneously maximized the usable space in the vast atrium, as well as provided ceilings for security cameras to be installed over the gaming tables. It also prevented guests staying inside the pyramid from being able to look down over the casino floor. Basic casino design philosophy is the gaming floor should be the first thing you see when you enter a property. The problem with Luxor was, when you entered the property, you couldn't see the casino at all. You could hear it, but the Nile River ride and the themed walls obstructed the view. The next problem was the registration desk. It was to the left of the entrance. While no longer something the industry applies religiously, common practice at the time was to draw people into the casino, often through it, to get to the check-in desk. Failing that, you should at least require guests to move through the casino to get to their rooms. Since the inclinators are located at the four corners of the pyramid, this experience allowed guests to enter the property, check into the hotel, and drop their stuff off in their room before stepping foot in the casino. With this setup, the property never had the opportunity to immerse a guest in the atmosphere that inspires the desire to get into the action of the casino as soon and as often as possible. Next, a critical eye was taken to the attractions. While they pulled in an average of 1 million people a year and generated almost $22 million in revenue, all were considered to have a short shelf life. So, a plan was put in place to renovate the property into the resort it should have been. It started in 1995 with the closing of the arena-style show called the Pharaoh's Dinner Theater and converting it into convention space. Honestly, it was nothing more than an Egyptian-themed version of the Tournament of Kings attraction at Excalibur. In 1996, the plan to renovate and expand the property was announced at a cost of $250 million, or more than half of what it cost to build the entire resort 4 years earlier. Plan shared included a new lobby, a moving walkway that connected Luxor to Excalibur, a redesign of the property's interior, including a 35-foot-tall replica of the Great Temple of Ramses II that would serve as the new entrance to the casino, as well as the addition of a nightclub named Ra. The property would expand by building 2 ziggurat-shaped towers that would add 2,000 new rooms to Luxor's inventory. Ziggurats are another style of pyramid most commonly associated with the Mayans, and adhering to the step-back aesthetic the property originally had planned for the project. Beyond the new hotel, the largest and most notable renovation was the $5 million removal of the Nile River ride, determined to be more of a bottleneck for guests than a playfully themed attraction. Despite still making money for the resort, it was determined that, over time, a bank of slot machines would generate more revenue than the attraction would. Another attraction that was eliminated was the 2 talking audio animatronic camels named Elias and Jody, aka Humpy and Lumpy. Originally located near the Oasis area in the casino, they were initially relocated to the casino lobby, then the moving walkway between Luxor and Excalibur, before being removed from the property entirely in 2003. Some point to the Luxor renovations as the beginning of the de-theming trend in Las Vegas, but that isn't actually accurate. The renovations weren't abandoning the theme, they were simply meant to scale everything up, replacing whimsical with sophisticated. Replacing the rock wall with a replica of the entrance to Ramses' Great Temple as the entrance to the casino is just one example of that. Another is the plan to have a real mummy on display at Luxor. A deal was almost done with the Egyptian government, but was derailed when they learned that the plan was to display the mummy on the casino floor. When the Egyptian government objected and insisted that it be placed in a separate building outside the casino, interest in the exhibit was lost. With the return of several of Bennett's in-house developed talent running the show again, many believe the company was back on track. However, not everyone agreed that the Luxor needed many of the planned renovations. Some felt they were unnecessary and only done because they were Bennett's ideas. After all, the property was a financial success pretty much as soon as it opened. However, senior leadership believed if the renovations weren't done, Luxor's success would be short-lived. Quote, cheap buffets and cheap rooms used to be enough when Bennett was running things because Las Vegas was the only place you could gamble. But most Americans now live within an hour or two of a casino. We have to give them more than what they can see at home, unquote. While the thinking is sound, the argument can be made that things like a pyramid in the desert that offered inexpensive buffets and rooms, as well as a Nile River ride, were exactly that. Things people couldn't do or enjoy at their local casinos. Leadership knew the renovations would reduce traffic to the property and therefore reduce revenue. Attempting to mitigate that impact, room rates were lowered, acknowledging that no one wants to go on vacation and stay at a place with all that construction noise. However, even cheap rooms wouldn't be enough to counter the reduced revenue, so costs were cut wherever they could be. And so began the divide that would draw a clear line between two factions at Circus Circus Enterprises. Those who thought things were better under Bennett, and those who thought current leadership would take the company into the future. That's because one of the ways costs were cut was by doing something Bill Bennett made a concerted effort to never do: lay people off. In addition to that, the company made a gigantic philosophical shift in its compensation practices. The standard operating procedure of giving lucrative, incentive-based bonuses that created such fierce loyalty from the employees of Circus Circus Enterprises was discontinued. Those at the top still got their bonuses, but sharing the wealth with the staff like Bennett did was an abandoned concept. Staff members began to lament that the company was changing for the worst. During his first month in charge, Tony Alamo cut $400,000 in expenses, mostly by eliminating jobs. Staff complained that degrading the customer experience even further to combat the construction impact didn't make any sense. Management argued that the guests that Luxor currently attracted weren't the people the property would attract after renovations were complete, so no real damage was being done. Regardless of these efforts to limit the damage, returned Golden Boy Glenn Schaefer attempted to get out in front of the situation by informing Wall Street of the expected revenue drop, while reassuring that once the renovations were done, Luxor would earn a minimum of $120 million in profits in 1997. In 1996, Luxor pulled in $65 million in profits, $20 million less than the year before. In January of 97, traditionally a slow month in Vegas, Luxor came in nearly $3 million under projections. The following month was so bad, it made Schaefer's minimum profit goal for 97 nearly impossible to achieve. Investor patience began to wear thin. Now, it's important to clarify that while Luxor wasn't doing as well as projected, the company was still doing very well compared to other gaming companies. But after years of 20% or higher returns from Circus Circus Enterprises, a healthy return by all other standards simply wasn't good enough. At the annual stockholders meeting, leadership got an earful. One shareholder asked, "How come Steve Wynn and the Mirage can make a profit when you guys can't?" The argument given was, Wynn didn't have backhoes and jackhammers in the lobby of his flagship property. If it had, then his earnings would have suffered. A response that inspired the retort, Steve Wynn wouldn't have needed to send a backhoe or jackhammers into his resort because he does things right the first time. Regardless of the slow start, in March of 97, things started to turn around for Luxor. There was a noticeable shift in the caliber of guests the property was able to attract. If looking at clothing is any indication, previously it was common to see guests with cut-off jeans, tank tops, and carrying coolers of booze around with them at Luxor. Now, men in polo shirts and khakis, with women in sundresses and designer apparel, were staying there. Luxor did so well in March of 97, the projections that appeared impossible to achieve after January and February's numbers suddenly looked like a realistic goal. Luxor did this by doing something that was unheard of at the time in Las Vegas. The hotel made money. And not only did it make money, it made as much money as the casino. At that moment, the concept of everything being a loss leader to attract people to play in the casino became an outdated notion. There was no reason why every part of the company couldn't make money. It was at that moment that Las Vegas stopped being a gambling town and evolved into a resort destination. 100% occupancy was no longer the goal. The average daily rate for a room became the number that resort hotels measured success by. Unfortunately, the upward trend wouldn't last long, and Luxor was hit hard in June and July. This was no one at Circus Circus' fault. The entire market was affected. Between January and May of '97, over 13,000 new rooms came online at properties all over the Strip. And while visitation was continuing to increase in Las Vegas, it wasn't increasing as fast as the number of available rooms had. Supply had caught up with demand in Vegas and then surpassed it. And with that many quality rooms available all over the city, Alamo's cost-cutting strategy of reducing the staff made the decrease in customer service even more glaring. And as revenue continued to decrease, Alamo continued to make staffing cuts to combat it, further exacerbating the true issue. Stockholders began to believe that CEO Clyde Turner had no idea how to relate or cater to the middle class, the demographic that made Circus Circus Entertainment the company it was. Some suggested they needed to split into two companies, one that operated grind joints and one for the new super casinos. Leadership began infighting when 1997 showed the largest drop in share price in the company's history. When it was all said and done, it was decided it was time for Clyde, the man who replaced Bill Bennett as CEO, to go as well. Eventually, the company and Luxor rebounded. Once renovations were complete, Luxor returned to success and profitability. The final cost to renovate the property was $450 to $475 million, depending on the source. Or simply stated, more than it cost to build the entire resort in the first place. What you see today when you come into Luxor from the main entrance is all the results of this renovation in Tony Alamo. The ability to see right into the casino, past the two large seated pharaohs, Egyptian murals and hieroglyphs displayed as art on the walls, the check-in desk, now located to the right of the entrance, are all visual representations of the massive renovations to cater to a more affluent guest. And the staff that once hated Alamo became loyal to the man and his vision once they saw it come to life and prove it would work. Alamo's success was rewarded when he was handed the task of running the company's newest and most luxurious project to date, Mandalay Bay, right next door. With Luxor seemingly on its way back to the top, and with the early success of Mandalay Bay, the company's stock price rallied, tripling in price. However, the stock price would never return to what it was in Bill Bennett's heyday. Further distancing themselves from the past affiliation as primarily a grind joint, in 1999, Circus Circus Enterprises was rebranded Mandalay Resorts. 5 years later, in a deal too good to pass up, Luxor and the rest of the properties in the Mandalay Resorts portfolio were purchased by MGM Resorts for $7.9 billion, making MGM Mirage, as it was known at the time, the largest gaming company in the world, as well as the owner of more than half of the hotel rooms on the Vegas Strip. For about 2 months. The Mandalay Resorts acquisition is said to be the inspiration behind Harrah's purchasing Park Place Entertainment in 1998, then making Harrah's the largest gaming company in the world. They too would eventually rebrand themselves as the company they are known today, Caesars Entertainment. I love Luxor on levels that are hard to articulate. While I can give you a million reasons why, my affection is as irrational as attraction. Think about it. Someone can tell you what they are attracted to in a person, but not why they find those things attractive in the first place. That's kind of like Luxor to me. It's a property that means more to me than it reasonably should. But I think that's fitting in a city where logic and reason are discarded the moment you sit down to play a game that mathematically you have no chance to win, at least over time. The Luxor Beam shines as a beacon of hope for me when I'm in the darkest places of my mind, guiding me back to the place that changed my life and would come to define it. If I leave a legacy when my time on this planet is done, it will most likely be related to Las Vegas, the city that Luxor brought me to.